What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're back with the big Destiny 2 news update, and we're going to talk briefly about the new Devil's Dawn quest, but then we've got some game news, a banned exotic, which is very broken, and so Bungie have disabled the Worm God's Caress, but unfortunately they're still kind of broken, so we'll explain that. We have got a possible hotfix as soon as next week for some of the issues in Season of Dawn, and then we're going to round up some important prep and a leaked preview of the Bastian exotic. On top of this, Bungie discussed the future of D2 seasons in a couple of new interviews, teased the future of the Pyramid Ship story, as well as a couple of other things, and then we've got some of the small updates from Bungie in this video. So guys, as always, if you do enjoy this one, a rating below is very much appreciated, but otherwise let's get straight into it. So, of course, this week we got the new quest for the Devil's Ruin, quite possibly taking first place for the fastest exotic quest in the game. However, one of the real prizes, aside from the weapon itself really, is the dialogue and some of the lore that we get throughout the quest. So, many of you guys pointed out, between Shaxx and Saint 14, there is a little bit of dialogue at the end, where Saint manages to encourage Shaxx to sing us a line or two.
I'm on the moon. It's made of cheese. That is awful.
That actually comes from a really cool section of dialogue at the end of the mission, and I will run that at the end of this video because it's kind of a secret-ish dialogue which starts a few seconds after Osiris says we're done with the mission. So if you did miss that and you want to check it out, that's at the end of the video. But Devil's Ruin actually has a secret kind of capability. It's probably a bug and not a secret perk, but this was shared by AM160 on Reddit. And so of course the new weapon has the perk Pyrogenesis. And if you fully charge the weapon and fire the laser when you have less than 15 rounds in the mag, basically the weapon will pull from reserves to refill the mag to 15 when the laser fires. But it does appear that there's kind of a hidden perk, and this does take a little bit of good timing, but if you hold down the trigger and charge the laser, and then release the trigger immediately as it hits maximum charge, Kumakobi shared a clip right here, where we can see you end up with a much brighter and larger laser visually. It doesn't increase damage, but it triggers the Pyrogenesis perk immediately once again, which means you get 15 rounds back into the mag. And ultimately you don't have to reload to fire another 15 rounds immediately. So you can actually see, by holding the trigger right there, and then releasing it immediately as it hits maximum charge, the ammo counter jumps up to 30, and then depletes back to 15 after you've fired that first laser shot. So kind of appears to be a hidden mechanic with the weapon, unless it turns out to be a bug or a catalyst perk that isn't meant to be there at the moment. So that's definitely interesting, and of course, if you haven't picked up the Devil's Ruin sidearm just yet, you can check out the quest guide for that if you need to, which is linked below. However, at the same time as the quest launched, Bungie actually ended up disabling an exotic in the game. So Bungie help said, due to an issue with the Worm God Caress exotic gauntlets, where the Burning Fists perk retains increased melee damage after its intended timer countdown, it has been disabled until a fix can be deployed at a later date. And of course, we have spoken about this exotic in the past couple of seasons, highlighting just how strong it is with some of the initial build videos, but then things have evolved, and essentially, if you get 5 stacks of damage with the Worm Gods, then really quickly go into your inventory, switch to a different piece of armor, and then re-equip Worm Gods very quickly. Essentially, the timer disappears, but the damage buff remains there permanently. And so obviously that is pretty broken and enables teams of players to absolutely destroy bosses in raids, and I'm sure you've seen some of the videos from Glad & Co. And so the Year 2 version of Worm God Caress is actually disabled, but if you have a Year 1 version currently in your inventory, it's still possible to equip it and benefit from the same perk and the same glitch. So it isn't quite entirely fixed, and apparently this can be done with Winter's Guile at the moment as well, so pretty crazy stuff, and it does add to the list of problems for Bungie to solve. They could potentially also disable the Year 1 version of any of those Worm God gauntlets, but we'll have to see when they give us an update. Actually, according to DMG, it's possible that if we're lucky, we'll get a hotfix next week. So we said now that we're back from holiday, we'll be planning a quick hotfix, potentially for next week, which will address both the issue with the Eververse icon continually flashing, but they're also looking to address the EDZ obelisk problem as well. So he says they'll give us those details in this week at Bungie, and once again, if we're lucky, we'll get the update next week, but it's possible that we could have to wait just a little bit longer. On the subject of upcoming content though, we do have a quick shout for the Bastian here. So this is our next upcoming quest, and so far, we've seen it up close in some B-roll. However, interestingly, at a Destiny 2 community event in the Netherlands, some players actually got access to the weapon, and Smarty Style sneakily recorded some very shaky footage of the weapon in gameplay. I'll put the full link for that down below, although we can see the weapon rapidly firing 3 slugs when charged up. So that gives us just a little bit of an idea of how it'll actually kind of behave, but of course the weapon will also have a perk to allow a portion of the weapon's damage to bypass shields, so it potentially could be pretty good for content with modifiers like Match Game. However, before Bastian's quest actually goes live on the 28th of January, there is a pretty huge shout for us to bear in mind. And it comes with a mild spoiler alert, but essentially there's a step that requires the completion of 10 spider bounties. It doesn't specify exactly which type of spider bounty we need, so presumably any of them will do. But obviously, if you wait until that quest launches on the 28th of January, it could take a good while to go get 10 bounties done. Whereas if you start now, just slowly hoarding a few over the next couple of weeks, in theory, based on what we see in the database, you'll be able to just turn those in and complete that step of the quest when we actually get to it. So if you want to get that one done quickly, definitely bear that in mind. Here though, Bungie speak about the future of D2's narrative, seasonal content in Year 3, how some of that may evolve, and they talk about the ending of Shadowkeep, the pyramids, and their importance in major upcoming story beats in the game, which of course quite possibly would include the next big expansion that we get probably in the fall of this year. So I'll link both of these interviews down below, but to go over some of the relevant stuff, one of the devs said, our seasonal model allows us every month to propel the story forward in a way that players are directly impacting and leaving a lasting change in the world. You're going to see more and more of that as time goes on. And of course, Season of Dawn itself is going to end on March the 9th, 2020, so more or less literally 2 months away from now. And our best guess for the theme of that drop at the moment would possibly be something Rasputin related. That's purely based on what Bungie showed in the Year 3 Vidoc for the game. And so if you're curious about the start of next season, bear that date in mind, March 9th. But before talking about future seasons, Bungie talk about Shadowkeep's story, the pyramids, and how that will factor into future narratives. So, on the subject of the pyramid, Robbie Stevens from Bungie said that this is a large cosmic force, unlike anything that players have seen before. It has its own intrinsic power and abilities that we're just scratching the surface on, and what the darkness actually means. The way the player interacts with the ship begins to slowly pull back the curtain on what these cosmic beings really are. Robbie Stevens does add that we don't want to say exactly what these beings are, it's going to unfold over time, and what they are is going to be told through the lenses of characters, even if someone directly references it, they're giving their point of view. Moving these through lines forward, these big touchstone releases like Shadowkeep are going to unfurl those stories. And so that in itself's pretty interesting, isn't it? Because Bungie are directly saying they're not done with the story of the darkness, the pyramid ships. And also, it kind of suggests that references to the pyramid ships and the darkness and everything that's been going on in the moon in Shadowkeep may actually be fairly minimal in some of the story narrative that we'll get in the next couple of months, but that's something that's going to build back up to another big release for the game. So that's definitely really interesting, and the interviewer actually references the cutscene at the end of Shadowkeep, where we see our player's character Doppelganger. And once again, Robbie Stevens says we're putting those pieces in place for the future. Those moments you're seeing in Shadowkeep, where you see your Doppelganger and you're interacting with the pyramid ships and it's speaking to you, are where we're setting the stage. So that's really interesting. Let us know your thoughts about that. They don't talk too much on the front of gameplay moving forward seasonally, but they do say that the studio has been experimenting with telling ongoing stories across multiple seasons in the last couple of seasons. And without divulging any spoilers, Rachel Levine from Bungie did tease that they're going to continue experimenting and are excited to pursue different avenues of the story in the future. Deej actually jumps in and he does say, players should always assume that Destiny is going to change and evolve. Players need to stay open-minded and flexible about how this world will serve them with different challenges and the options they'll have to create and optimize their own characters in the future. And I guess that is one of those fairly generic statements, right? But I believe it was in an interview we spoke about a couple of weeks back. They also loosely suggested that we shouldn't necessarily expect to see the same kind of horde mode, main activity layout that we've been seeing season over season for all of the seasons throughout Year 3. And so potentially next season we'll get something a little bit different. And I think when you look at seasons that we've had since pretty much Black Armory, outside of the individual content problems that they have, I guess at this point one of the main pieces of feedback would be about that repetition of kind of horde modes and rune table based kind of loot systems. In certain instances they've definitely been pretty good, but from what I can tell it seems like a lot of players are wanting to start and see something a little bit different. So give us your thoughts about that, but also I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Bungie have said about the future story of the pyramids, the darkness, and kind of returning to that slowly over time. It does look like any kind of major resolution to that is either going to begin in the final season of this year or maybe even in the fall after that. And of course, Bungie are teasing us about the possible return of certain characters. Prince Aldrin is one of the most likely characters to actually come back into the game based on what we know at least. And Bungie have of course teased in the lore that he's known to be camped out in the European Dead Zone at the moment, so there's definitely a lot of potential with the story. However, I think there are a lot of concerns about gameplay across PvE, but also PvP very specifically at the moment as well. So once again, give us your thoughts below. Couple of bits of feedback and responses from Bungie here though. There's a very popular thread on the front page of Reddit at the moment, and really it boils down to a lot of player frustration about Solstice of Heroes armor. So there has been feedback about the very low stats for Solstice armor that came from the event last year. Of course, that became the first Armor 2.0 set that we could actually acquire, but also there's the element where you have to purchase ornaments for them, and then of course at the moment they are essentially non-upgradable in terms of stats, so that's one issue, and the post does contain, quite a lot of speculation about what Bungie could do in the future. But DMG's response is that the team has been digesting feedback concerning Solstice armor from Year 1 and Year 2, and he adds that he doesn't have any specifics on status, but he can say that Solstice armor issues will not be addressed this season or in the next season. And so of course we don't currently have a Solstice event, so we're not going to get any changes to something that currently isn't live in the game, but he's also confirming that they're not going to go back and adjust the stats on Solstice gear that we earned in the summer of 2019. So I do think that's a little bit disappointing, and once again, give us your thoughts about it. A couple of dawning bugs that have been mentioned. So firstly, items can move around in the inventory when opening dawning packages. This has been a bit of a nightmare for some players and their postmasters, but also they've taken feedback that some highly important items actually dismantle as stacks. And of course we only have a few days left of this event, but DMG does say that they'll note these and work towards preventing the same headaches in the future. There's also a common community request at the moment to have the bright dust cost in the Tribute Hall reduced or completely removed. And of course we had the Tribute Hall in Season of Opulence, which really helped us spend a bunch of dust. And since then the economy has been adjusted, so Cosmo said he'll give the feedback to the team. There are bounties that exist to reduce the cost, but they will let the team know that players would like the overall cost reduced as well. For today though guys, until Bungie give us an update tomorrow, with This Week at Bungie, that's the bulk of the new stuff that we've got to round up. Some of the interview segments were kind of interesting, especially the story aspect of it. Once again, story is a strong point for Destiny currently, at least versus how the story has been presented in the past, right? So I'm curious to see how what happened in Shadowkeep is going to kind of pay off into the future, and how we'll hand off between Season 9 and Season 10. Hopefully, much better than what we saw between Season of Undying and Dawn. But give us your thoughts on the quest for Devil's Ruin, any of the interview stuff we spoke about, the broken exotic worm gods, and any updates you'd love to see. But if you've enjoyed the video, a rating is really appreciated, guys. And if you're new around here, feel free to hit subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything related to the game. I'm going to run the interaction between Saint 14 and Lord Shaxx at Twilight Gap right here. Once again, if it's something you missed, it may be something that you'd like to check out. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in, and whatever you guys get up to, I hope you have an absolutely awesome day.
Shaxx, the Crucible. What have you done with it?
It's not the crucible by which you and I were forged. Took years. But Twilight Gap changed everything. After that day out there, the crucible went from a place where we settled our differences to a place where we bettered ourselves.
I heard you give out some amazing weapons to your fighters.
Those weapons are earned with blood, sweat, and tears.
Are you sure your fighters are bettering themselves or chasing hardware?
Listen, even Guardians need to get paid once in a while.
When you put it that way, you sound like that sad, lonely rat man who lives downstairs.
The Drifter. Keep your enemies close, right? Watch him for us.
I was shocked to see Eris mourn again. She is not as she was.
She represents the best of us. Ghostless. And stronger than you and me both.
Perhaps we could get her a bigger gun. She would not have to carry that rock all the time. Speaking of guns, tell me more about these weapons you've crafted. I am not allowed to earn them. I have heard you made one for young Redrix. Redrix's Claymore?
Broadsword.
Whatever. There was a hand cannon as well. You made one for Yosef. Luna's Howl.
Yes, Luna was his dog. She passed on the moon, fighting Hive.
Those bastards. I'm glad you killed their king.
Are these questions leading anywhere, Saint?
Yes. The long rifle you designed, the Revoker, what's the story behind it? What does it do?
It shoots bullets, Saint. It's a gun.
All the good work you've done. The city is amazing. The tower is amazing.
Anything I've done pales in comparison to what our Guardian has accomplished.
I always told you she would return to save us.
Still wearing that spinfoil hat, I see. The Guardian saved you with Vex Tech. She is not a divine savior.
Wanna bet?
Oh, you never change.
And you still owe me Glimmer.
In my defense, you were dead. And I don't make much as Crucible handler.
You know, when I walk the streets of the city, the children demand I carry them. I do so, but I ask them to sing me a song. A song of their people.
No, I refuse.
Then you can pay me. A Titan is only as good as his word.
But I don't know any songs.
Make something up.
Let me see. Eris hummed a few bars on the moon. How did it go? I'm on the moon. It's made of cheese.
That is awful.
It's not my song. It's Eris's.